I know that I'm a created being, and I know that life is always working for me, always, without exception, no exceptions to the rules. I'm lovingly guided. I'm always safe.
Welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Barone. In this show, I will introduce you to ideas, concepts, and mindsets that will open your mind to a new world of well-being and personal life growth. Through eye-opening interviews, we elevate people in the world doing amazing things for humanity and share insights that will shift you to become the happiest, healthiest, kindest, and most compassionate version of you. Hello and welcome back to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast, and thank you for joining me. In today's show, we're focusing on transformation and manifestation, which are two of my favorite topics. Now, I've invited former lawyer Lauren Trlin on the show, and these days Lauren helps leaders, coaches, and entrepreneurs align to their highest mission and potential through the power of mindset, business strategy, and energy or frequency. She has helped hundreds of professionals and entrepreneurs find their purpose, break through their internal blocks, and launch and scale their businesses. Her clients are C-suite executives, startup founders, first-time and multi-seven-figure entrepreneurs. Loren is also the host of the Modern Alchemist podcast that was created to help people illuminate their potential and designed to elevate the spirit, balance the mind, and facilitate the evolution of your consciousness. Welcome, Lauren, to the show. I just know I'm going to enjoy this conversation immensely.
I can't wait. It's my favorite topic of all time.
Absolutely. Now, how are you?
I'm doing amazing. Doing so good.
I knew you were going to say that. Do you know why?
Why?
Because you have a high vibration language, I've learned by listening to a lot of the work that you've been putting out there. And since I listened to one of your podcast episodes a couple of days ago, I know you say thank you, thank you, thank you every time you wake up. The first thing you do is you say thank you, thank you, thank you, expressing gratitude, and you instantly lifting your vibration.
Yeah, most people don't realize that words have their own vibration, and that everything that goes through our mind and comes out of us has a particular frequency. And so part of what we have to do is we have to unlearn old patterns of speaking. I mean, let's use the example of anytime you ask an Australian how they are, they're like, oh, good. Yeah, good.
Or not bad.
Not bad, right? And it's such like a middle of the neutral frequency. And we can shift our reality very, very easily by being incredibly intentional by our words. So when someone asks me how I am, I'm freaking amazing. And guess what? I create that reality as a result.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, our language is so incredibly powerful. And if you are going with the not bad, well, you're going to be feeling not bad, but you're not going to be feeling great either. And
exactly.
It sort of gets others in that frequency as well.
It does.
You build that momentum for others to think, oh, well, I'm not actually bad either. I'm pretty good too. I'm doing all right now. So I love that you're sharing that energy with everyone in your community, and now with everyone listening today. Now, I know you're a former lawyer and you've spent a lot of time reinventing yourself. And for those who are listening today who don't know your story, I'd love for you to share it with us.
Oh, so I come from Perth. I grew up in Perth, and both of my parents were Croatian migrants. So I grew up in the, big, crazy European family. And I think I learned so much about human behavior and dynamics simply being in that space with them. So I did what good girls went and do that were star students. And I went off and did a law finance degree and ended up doing law. Really doing it because I thought that's what I had to do, as opposed to realizing that this was actually what I wanted to spend my life doing. So I went down that path, and then I had what I would call like a catalyst event in the form of a family tragedy. So on Saturday, so 2 days from now, it's actually my dad's, the 9th anniversary of his passing. And that was a massive catalyst event for me in my life, where everything as I knew it fell apart so completely that I had to reconstruct every aspect of myself. And as I was doing so, I was like, well, how do I actually want to put the pieces of this puzzle back together? And that's really how I got onto this path of, well, if all of this feels pointless, what actually gives me meaning?
So you made those changes in your life, and what were the next steps for you, and how did they look?
Yeah, so the next steps were deep healing,
Mm.
massive healing, because I had experienced trauma which I wasn't coping with. The people around me weren't coping very, very well. So my journey as a coach actually started by seeing my first psychologist in my life at the age of 23. And it was with her help that not only did I start to work through the trauma I had been through with the loss of my dad, but I started to see how so many patterns that were unconscious in my life around my upbringing, around my conditioning, how they weren't serving me any longer as well. So it just opened my whole life up to this understanding that firstly, we create our own reality, and I get to decide how I want my story to unfold. And up until that point, I just thought that I was living life as almost a victim to some extent, but also at the mercy of life, as opposed to realizing that I could actively create it.
I'm really sorry to hear of your dad's passing and the anniversary that's coming up. And thank you for sharing that with
Yeah,
us. I feel like a lot of us right now are going through a bit of a life-defining
definitely.
moment in our lives with
Definitely.
everything that's going on.
Yeah,
And so many of us are making decisions now. We've realized, hang on, we're not living life as we could be to make ourselves our happiest and our healthiest.
completely. Yep.
What changes do we need to make to explore that? And I think
Mm,
this is one great positive that's coming out of the situation that everyone's in right now
yeah.
around COVID-19 is that we're forced to lean into change and to
Yes.
look at other options. If someone's considering reinventing themselves, where do they
Yes.
start? Where do they look? What questions do they begin to ask themselves?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And, it really ties into a lot of the personal work that I'd done since 2011. And I wanted to share that with people because if anyone's currently going through a time of great change and confusion, firstly, great. I know how uncomfortable it feels, and it can be really incredibly painful as well, especially if we have all of our fears coming up to the surface. But I wouldn't take away the experiences that I've had because they have allowed me to come to this point. And some of the questions that I really had to ask myself was, who am I?
Mm.
What kind of mission and purpose can I attribute to my life? Because all of us humans need something to move towards. And then what do I need to let go of in order to get there? And so for most of us, it's going to be old ways of thinking, old beliefs, old rules that we have around what life is, old expectations that we have of ourselves, old roles that we've taken on from family and from society. And then when we can get really, really honest with who we are not anymore, then we can actually do the work of becoming who we're really supposed to be here in this
Mm.
lifetime.
Plenty of healing for a lot of us to do. That's on a sort of a personal level. When you go
Yeah.
into businesses and
Yes.
work with entrepreneurs, how do you approach it in that manner?
It's the same work. It is, because our business is always a reflection of where we are at. So the more that we can step into the highest version of ourselves, our business always grows in proportion to that. Always.
It's so true. And I've been speaking to several transformational coaches over the last couple of weeks, and they all work around business. And they say you can't accelerate any change in business if you don't look at yourself first, at the
Always.
personal level first.
Always. Yeah.
Are there steps that we can it's like, what's the first step? I'm a big believer that change is always sparked by that very first step. And if there's
Yep.
one thing that we can each do after we jump off listening to this podcast, all of us to get to know ourselves on a bit of a deeper level. Who am I? Like, that's a huge question that's taken me
Yes.
years to figure out, and I'm still not even halfway there. But
Yep.
what's that first step that we can do when we jump off this podcast to find ourselves that little bit further?
Curiosity. So most people live 98% of their reality is just a reflection of the day before and the day before that. So a lot of us are living in the past and we're on autopilot. And
Mm.
I'm seeing that massively at the moment with everything that's unfolding. People just, whatever they're told to do, they go do it without questioning anything. So we start to shift our life by starting to ask really good questions. And that starts with being curious. What am I currently curious about? And it might be something like, I want to learn how to knit, for example. And then our conscious mind and our ego gets in the way and it says, well, why would you want to learn how to knit? You've never been into knitting. What are you going to knit? And then we shut that thought down, that curiosity down as soon as it arises. But that curiosity contains the spark of energy that is going to send us on the treasure hunt of actually figuring out who we are and who we want to be.
I always say that follow the breadcrumbs to what is out there, and shutting off the noise. I think is a big thing too, just shutting off the distractions and allowing yourself that time to be curious and ask the deeper questions.
Yes.
I know you've said before you've shut off from media and all of the distractions of news and radio and the outside noise. And I know, I suppose now is a hard time to do that, but we probably need to do it.
Now is the time to do it. Yeah. And we have to realize that we have a collective addiction to fear collectively. And we need to start to unplug from that fear, because we never make any good decisions from a place of fear. And part of it is breaking free of the addiction and the story that we tell ourselves that like this is real. Reality is actually, there are many, many facets to reality. So what is real to one person is not real to another.
Fear can come in so many different forms.
Totally.
It can be about our health, which a lot of us are fearing now. Yep. It can be about our finances. It can be about our family. When we're thinking of it from a business perspective, and again, looking at that change and reinvention of ourselves, obviously financial aspects are such a big player here for people to step out of where they're situated currently in their career or in a job that probably isn't serving them, and to take that at risk financially. Do you have any support around that or guidance on how to best manage that gap or bridge that gap between leaving the place that you're unhappy in and going to that next step to live a life of purpose?
Yeah, it's a multi-layered situation. So most people tell the story that they're not capable, and there is a fear and a lack of trust there as to their ability to be able to make things happen, right? But if most of us were to look back over the course of our life, we've always been taken care of. We always have. We've always found a way. So most people's worst case scenarios never eventuate. And ultimately, the story around fear comes down to this fear of ending up homeless, unable to feed ourselves, and dead, right? So it's really a fear of death on some level. And once we can start to see, firstly, where our story takes us, where the fear takes us and what the end result is, then we can start to tell a better story, because we're meaning-making machines. We're very convinced as to the version of reality that we're telling ourselves, but very often, and nearly in all cases, it's actually not true. So people need to get really clear, like it actually has nothing to do with finances, but it comes down to some core fundamental stories and beliefs that we hold that need to be shifted, because when we shift those, then our entire reality shifts.
Shifting is such a pivotal key word that we need to really let ourselves experience. Shift, change, movement, expansion.
Yes.
I want to talk about a shift in consciousness. So for people who have started on their transformational journey and have taken a leap of faith or lent into change and or fear, there's a series of things that tend to happen to us. How do you know that you're experiencing a shift in consciousness?
Yeah, so a good sign is chaos. People freak out when they go out and start to create change in their life and it feels as though everything is falling apart. And I keep telling people, like, it's actually a sign that anything that no longer serves you is leaving your life so that your life can fall together at the higher level of consciousness. And so what's really interesting is, like, let's say, for example, people at the moment, maybe they lost their job and they're like, oh, darn, like, this is such a disaster. But then when you get really clear and ask them, it turns out that they hated that job to begin with. So is life doing you a favor, or are you a victim of circumstance, right? And so we have to realize that the first symptom after the discomfort is the chaos that comes before a massive shift in consciousness occurs.
You've recently posted 10 signs you're shifting level in consciousness.
Yes.
I absolutely love some of them. I laughed at some of them out loud actually because they're all quite true, for me on many levels.
So when we're talking about a shift in consciousness, it's what happens is that we actually undergo a massive identity shift at the same time. And the way that we used to see the world, our views about the world is shifting. So any confusion, any sense of feeling like ostracized from old family and friends are all signs of a shift in consciousness. So that's one of them that I mentioned. Another one is having almost checked off your checklist of what you thought was supposed to make you happy by society and family standards, and then waking up and having this deep sense of something still doesn't feel right. Something is still missing and not being able to pinpoint that. That's a really big one, especially in a place like Australia where we're quite privileged in being able to check a lot of it off the list, a lot of the things off at the list quite quickly and early on in our life. And then the question is like, what's next?
That's very true.
And I think feeling ostracized from other people is a massive example of that. It's happening big time at the moment. I can definitely see that society is splitting into very different trains of thought. And we have to realize that this is all part of the consciousness shift process. And secondly, it's a good thing. We don't want to continue having the same things in common with everyone that we've always been surrounded by. Otherwise, it would mean that either we're not growing or there are people around us, including ourselves, that aren't being honest with one another about their growth.
It's funny, there's sometimes you can sit in a room with 15 people and feel so lonely because you don't align to any of their ways of thinking, or you can sit in a room with one person and feel so completely connected because you're like-minded individuals.
Exactly.
And I think that's a really big one, to be making sure that we're around the people that lift and elevate us to who we really are.
Totally. And as we're starting to shift levels of consciousness, we will start to be uncomfortable in some people's presence. And that is no judgment upon them as a person. But as we move out of energetic alignment, the situations, the relationships, and the places where we used to place ourselves may no longer work for us anymore. And it's subtle.
Transformation definitely requires losing people in some way or another. And that's something that you just have to find comfort with.
Yes, but it also means that we have to create space to allow more in at the same time. So anytime I've ever let someone leave my life, there's always been a small gap before the next person turns up.
And isn't that beautiful when you're so conscious of it and aware, and you're welcoming them in because you are almost expecting that to happen because you've created the space.
And then more and more incredible people turn up every single time without fail, because I allow myself to own how I'm feeling, own what I desire in my next group of relationships, and they always have to turn up.
Absolutely love that.
Yeah. We tend to, if we're playing out the same old patterns, we tend to have the same money ceiling around how much abundance we can allow into our life. We might find that we're not manifesting the things that we want is because we're on autopilot. And the version that we're moving into, that version of us cannot play out the same level of thinking, the same way of doing, and the same way of being in order to manifest those results, those extraordinary results that are currently beyond our current realm of understanding.
So it's the clearing that really needs to happen.
It does. And there has to be a shift, an internal shift in thinking and belief, and an energetic shift that's required. And most people think that they can read a book, even listen to like a bunch of free podcasts, that they can logic their way through this process. It's not logical. It's not, and it's not linear, and it doesn't make sense a lot of the time because the level of thinking that got you here is not going to get you to where you're going. So it requires a shift in consciousness and a shift in thinking.
How do we get that shift in thinking? I know you mentioned plant medicine in one of your points as well. There's a big talk about, I'm just starting to research it a little bit now and get more educated in how that works in order to shift our consciousness.
Yes.
Is that something that you can explain to me on a deeper level?
Yes, plant medicine is one of many, many tools that we are so lucky to have access to. I would say, for someone that is earlier on the journey, and this is, I cannot emphasize this enough, people need to go and invest in working with coaches and healers if they want to go through this process in a much easier, faster manner. I speak to Australians again because we're both in Australia at the moment, and I've lived in the US and had multiple different experiences. We here have a tendency to think that we will somehow figure this out on our own. And the answer is, like, we are community beings and we're supposed to help one another with these shifts. Like, consciousness is contagious.
It's the Australian, she'll be right, mate.
She'll be right. Exactly. I'll just figure it out. And it's like, it doesn't work that way. We need to be lovingly supported through this. And there's a tendency to not want to invest in ourselves either. Whereas manifestation, or source, God, universe, whatever you want to call it, requires us to make a commitment and an investment first, always, whether that be time, energy, or something else. And so the biggest way that I've found for, I'm mindful of using the word shortcut because it's not really a shortcut, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done, is firstly to make a commitment to your transformation and recognizing that you need to be lovingly supported through the process. And I think plant medicine is a phenomenal tool. It's just not the first tool on the path.
So how does it work to really unlock and heal?
Yeah, there's so many different incredible modalities. And it requires us to, let's say, for example, like a lot of the work that I do requires people to clear out old emotional patterns and traumas. And what we're doing is, and a lot of it's not even conscious, it's subconscious. And we need a series of tools that allows us to release that from our body, from our system. It allows us to start to rewire the brain so that we can shift into the next version of who we are. And there are so many different tools that allows us to do it. And the amazing thing is that people have laid the groundwork for us. These tools, these healing modalities are actively available to us. The question is, do we trust ourselves enough to take the first step and to take the first step on the journey, knowing that the path will continue to reveal itself as we go along?
Plant medicine's been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years.
Phenomenal.
It's starting to see a bit of a comeback in recent times, especially with healing and transformation.
Yes.
Is this something that you've seen more and more of over the past few years?
I think that there's just more access to people being able to travel out to particular places and have these experiences. I think with the shift in consciousness that's currently unfolding on Earth, it makes total sense that more of this information is coming to the surface, because on some level it's been hidden from us.
Why has it been hidden from us, do you think?
Because human beings that know their power and that recognize that they are powerful creators that cannot be controlled are on some level dangerous.
I'm a very, very visual person, and I'd love you to talk us through what a plant medicine experience feels like, if you're up for it. I mean,
it's impossible to be able to explain it with words. It's one that definitely has to be experienced. I'll give you some insights. Any healing journey requires us to go back to the root cause of something in order to learn the lesson and to lovingly release it. So any sort of hypnosis or transformational work that I do will guide a client back to that point. Now, plant medicine allows you to, let's say, for example, you want to heal a particular block. It allows you to see in a number of seconds, imagine seeing a whole movie of your life unfold, and you can see every single time in which you had that belief or that block came up for you in your lifetime in like seconds, right? So it comes up for you. And then there's a moment where it'll keep turning up, keep turning up, keep turning up until you understand what the lesson was from those experiences, so that as soon as you learn the lessons, the experience no longer has to continue. And that is simply an example of what we're actually doing in our human experience. So a plant medicine journey is the same as a human journey that we go on from day to day. Most people play out the same pattern over and over and over again without taking the time to learn the lesson and to heal the lesson so that they can move to the next stage. And so medicine is just showing us, like on a micro, like contracted time frame, exactly what we need to do in our day-to-day life. And that's the great gift of it. It's genius.
It absolutely sounds like genius. And do you find with the people that you've worked on, or what you've seen, that the healing is pretty much instantaneous?
It's instantaneous. It always is. And so with a lot of the work that I do, the shift happens immediately. And then the person takes, like, let's say, for example, when I speak to them 12 months later, they're living a completely different life because they've then gone about integrating the shift in their day-to-day life. The same happens if you do plant medicine. There's an integration process with any healing work that we do. And so humans want to do very little and have instantaneous results, but like anything in life, we need to allow our physical body to integrate all of the shifts, and the time passes anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so we just have to fall in love with the journey of self-exploration and the fun that actually comes with unlocking all of this as part of our human experience. And it gets better and better.
If you're in that situation and you are finding yourself resisting the plant,
yes.
what are the experiences there?
If you resist it, you can't. It's painful. But once again, it's just how it is in real life. When you resist and you refuse to surrender to the process of life because you want to control it, you're in for a really uncomfortable ride.
Fascinating. I'd be absolutely petrified to try it, but it sounds so intriguing and something that I'm definitely going to do a lot more research on.
Yes.
When it comes to manifesting our lives, manifesting a certain outcome, manifesting a certain career or certain abundance or whatever it is in our lives that we want to bring into reality, are there tips, techniques, advice, guidelines that you have that can help us to do that over a period of time?
Yeah, so the biggest thing when I'm working with people is getting people to be very clear around what they actually want. Now that sounds super basic, but 99% of people do not have any idea or clarity as to what they actually want in life. They're super vague about it. So they'll say something along the lines of, well, I just want to be happy. And it's like, well, what does that actually mean to you? What are the fundamental aspects of it? So the first piece is clarity. Everyone's too vague, pretty much everyone. Even me as a manifester, I still get caught out in vagueness, and then I manifest something that's almost what I wanted, but not quite. So we have to get really, really specific. And then manifestation isn't a process of becoming. If anything, it's more of a process of letting go of anything that you are not and that is not in alignment with what you want to create. So if I were to give you an example, let's say, for example, you want to manifest your soulmate, but you still keep dating terrible men because you hold an underlying belief that you're not actually worthy of the love that you want. Now, dating more men is not going to solve your manifestation problem, but healing the core underlying wound that you picked up on when you were a little girl that says you're not worthy and deserving of the deep love that you want changes your vibration, shifts your belief into a higher vibrational belief that makes you more of an energetic match for what you want. So the process is very much getting clear on your vision, and then what is blocking me or stopping me from bringing this vision to life, and bringing up all of the old stories, the old wounds, the old memories that are blocking you from being a vibrational match to what you want. And then you have a process where you go and either work on it on your own, you go and start to find healers or coaches that can help you reshift and rewire those old beliefs that will automatically start to shift you closer to what you want. And then life will start to deliver you more of what you want. So all of a sudden, like, better quality men turn up in your life. All of a sudden you're feeling better about yourself and you have a lot more self-love. You're feeling a sense of confidence. And that's how you know that you're getting closer to the vision that you have.
So if it came to tools that we could implement, are you a fan of vision boards and journaling or any of those type of tools?
All fantastic tools. All fantastic. but they're one piece of the puzzle. So you can have like the goal that you want on the board, but if there's an internal story in you that says that I still can't have this, that you're not looking at and resolving, you're not going to manifest what you have on the vision board. So the visional piece is like the first piece of the puzzle. Then it's the deep transformational work that needs to be done. That's the aligned action piece. And then it's about, once you've done that, you just let go, because you know that whatever you want has to turn up because you're in alignment with it.
And that's where the coaches and the mentors can be so beneficial, right?
So beneficial, because I'm this type of person, I don't like doing things the hard way. I'd rather just get in there with someone that I trust so that we can work through all of the resistance. All of that old stuff is resistance, quickly and easily, so that I can keep going and, flying forward in my journey in life. Because if anything, we really have no idea how incredible we are and how powerful we are at manifesting what we want. If anything, we really have low standards. Genuinely. And I mean that in the kindest way possible. We do not have an idea. Most people do not know how capable they are of creating what they want in life.
So it's 3 steps really. 1, getting clear on exactly what you're after.
Yes.
2, unblocking those limited beliefs that are holding us back.
Yep.
And then 3, surrendering.
Yes. It's done. It is done already. It's already happened.
I love that. It sounds so simple. And it is simple, but it can be painful and it can be a process, but the positivity is there at the end of it. The reward is there.
The reward is and that's why we're here, to have that experience as human beings. If we got it straight away, it wouldn't be half as fun.
So your life now as an ex-lawyer, compared to then versus now, where you're living this life of purpose, what's the feeling difference?
Oh my gosh, I feel like I've lived 3 different lifetimes in that time. So I left 5 years ago. I was very stressed out, anxious, tired woman then. Still very ambitious, like full of life and energy. But the version of me now, I would not want to return back to that old body that I was in, who was like anxiety ridden, always worried, obsessive thoughts, limiting beliefs, holding on to so many unintegrated emotions. That would be torture for me to go back there now. I just feel like a completely different woman. There's like a sense of peace and clarity that I have now, like a deep trust and knowing that everything that I want is coming to fruition. If anything, like my only job is to keep myself open to more of the incredible stuff that is turning up. And, even in 2020, when a lot of people might think like, this is not my year, this gets to be your year. And like, I'm having a great time despite everything that's going on. And I know it's a challenging time, but I've done the work to allow me to still find happiness amidst all of this.
So we shouldn't write 2020 off just yet, hey?
No, it's incredibly transformational. We all have to have these years in our life. For me, that year was 2011. It was a freaking disaster, an absolute disaster, but it has made me the woman that I am today. So like one of my old mentors said to me, you either squeeze the juice out of life or life is going to squeeze you. And humanity on some level has been incredibly complacent. We've been distracted. We're constantly making excuses for why we shouldn't do our deep transformational work. Now, the people that are getting squeezed the most are the people that are being lovingly asked to do the work. Same thing if we were in a plant medicine ceremony right now. Some of us would be purging into a bucket, and the rest of us would be watching, knowing that that's going to be me at some point. And it has to come out. It has a mass purge, right? See how ceremony once again matches what happens to us in real life? We have to let go of what no longer serves us.
Otherwise, it will just catch up with us eventually.
And you'll feel nauseous and disgusting, and it's going to have to come out at some point. So better now than 5 years from now.
Do you think a lot of us are holding wounds from past lives as well as the lives that we're currently in?
Yes, but I think that most people honestly lack awareness as to how much they're holding on to from this lifetime to begin with. It can almost be easy to be like, oh, that's a past life thing. No, like there's still so much work that we get to do here in this life. And this is where the work begins. This is why we're here having a human experience. there's some stuff that's also from family, down family lines as well. And so a lot of the work that I do clears that not out of this present lifetime, but down family lines and also past life.
It's really fascinating stuff to think that so many of us have these painful experiences that we haven't dealt with and that we have no idea are holding us back from living life to the best it can be.
Yeah.
It really is incredible that every single person listening today has these experiences that we haven't dealt with.
Yeah, and that our subconscious and our body protects us from the pain, but there comes a point where we have to face that head on. And this is why I actually love hiring people to help me. Like I've got 3 coaches at the moment. And because for me, it's so nice to be lovingly taken through the process where you can just have a total cry and a meltdown with someone who's lovingly guiding you through the healing work. Because if I was to do it on my own, I can tell you now, like I wouldn't do it. I would distract myself on my phone. I would go eat something and I would do anything to stop me from actually going there on my own and exploring that pain.
Because it hurts.
It does.
Tell us about your belief system and if that's something new that's come into your life or it's always been that way.
No, it's sort of been sitting there. I mean, I grew up Catholic. I'm no longer religious. I wouldn't even say that I'm like a new ager to some extent. I would say I'm more into this concept of consciousness and just on my own human journey, right? My mum always had books on the bookshelf around spirituality, and I think that's how I delved into it. But it wasn't until I had my experience losing my dad where I started having psychic, you would call it supernatural, life-shattering experiences. You know, I was astral traveling, I was leaving my body, people were turning up in our life with messages, and there was signs and synchronicities everywhere that I started to realize there was more to this reality than the story that I had been fed. And for me, some of my beliefs that I hold now is that, you know, you're not going to hear this on the news at the moment. It's that we are incredibly powerful, divine human beings, and we're powerful creators. This is why we're currently being brainwashed and manipulated to create a reality that we don't want for ourselves. And this is why we have to be very conscious in unplugging ourselves from the systems of brainwashing that are using our energy to manifest a terrible reality for humanity. So I'm very, very deliberate about it because I know how powerful we are. I know that I'm a created being, and I know that life is always working for me, always, without exception, no exceptions to the rules. I'm lovingly guided. I'm always safe. And that, you know, whatever my soul desires in order to fulfill my mission and purpose in this lifetime, I get to have.
There's obviously truth in the belief that we think as a collective and the outcome is based on what the collective is feeling and thinking energy-wise.
Totally. And we tend to externalize it. We're like, oh, this is happening to the world. It's like, no, we created it. And so we have to heal it. And this is where, you know, watching more news and feeding more fear into the system is actually creating more problems. And so we have to say non-negotiably that I'm not doing this anymore. I'm unplugging from the system, and my only focus is to go inwards and to focus on myself and become the best version of myself. And that's how I change the world.
I can't tell you how many people I interviewed prior to COVID-19 happening that kept saying there's a shift. It feels as though there's a shift coming. And they said it over and over, and it didn't matter who they were. It didn't matter whether they were coaches or psychics or entrepreneurs. Everyone kept saying the same thing. And I felt it too, and I just didn't expect it to be so significant as it. I thought there may be a mass awakening in some way, but it's definitely happened. And I love how you're finding the gold in it. I love how you're finding the positivity in it. You're using the opportunity to grow. And that's exactly what we all need to do when we're in this situation where we feel as though we've got very little control over what's happening next in our lives.
Yeah, and control's an illusion.
Yeah.
And it just, gives us a false sense of safety, whereas the reality is we're always safe. We're always taken care of. We are. We've just forgotten it.
I'm Maritza Barone. Thank you for listening to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'd love to keep the conversation going. Let us know what you thought of this episode, and if something really profound came up for you that you want to share, let's talk about it. You can find me on Instagram at Things You Can't Unhear, or on my personal page at Maritza_Barone. And if someone you know will benefit from something that was said in this show, make sure you share it with them too. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and keep up to date with what's next. And if you can spare a few seconds, please rate and review the show on iTunes, just so other people can find us more easily and quickly. And as always, my friends, be happy, be healthy, be conscious, and be kind.